actually start a center which is focused on, let's say, just the backend support, which is a great place to start with, right? What you need to make sure is that you spend some time to understand the culture of the bigger your mothership. We were one of the first companies to kind of just tell our employees to work from home, by the way. Right, so because we didn't have the qualms of like, okay, how is this going to work, how we're going to manage control, because there was an inherent trust that people are going to do the right thing. uh, if you are planning to do high complexity work in India, you might beat the numbers which maybe somebody is evaluating, but eventually what really matters is, are you able to do that work? When you're starting something, many times people don't realize it, but hiring is going to be one of the primary activity you're going to do in first 6 months. I would say 6 to 9 months.
Hello and warm welcome to Straight from the Heart, a podcast by Pragyan Advisory. I am Vivek Tiwari, your host. In the last several months, we've realized the importance of having focused and deep conversations like never before. And taking a leaf from the lessons learned, we have termed this series as Conversations. As part of Conversations, today we have someone who has been a part of the technology organizations for almost 25 years. He's worked and led some of the leading tech organizations like Cisco, Intel, Polycom, and is currently the country head and VP engineering of Dialpad India. Dear viewers and listeners, please welcome Amit Kaul. Amit, thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Vivek. It's been a pleasure, and I'm really glad to be on your show and hope that it's going to be a wonderful conversation.
I'm sure it will be. Thank you, Amit. The overall theme for our discussion today is building an organizational brand and culture in a competitive market. And what I'll do is, considering your background, considering the kind of work that you've done all across your career, and especially at Dialpad, I'll straight away jump into my first question.
Sure.
We would be eager, and I'm sure the viewers and listeners will also be eager to hear from you that we know that you had bootstrapped Indian entity of Dialpad in 2018, and then you scaled it up. Tell us, how did you attract and retain tech talent in an aggressively competitive market like India? And how did you manage to establish the organization's brand since it was a new organization setting up a base in India? How did you manage to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I just want to say that just to recap and give the context about my journey. I joined Alpad 3 years back, so it is approximately 3 years for me, and it has been a wonderful and amazing journey for me. And this was a journey which I signed up for. Literally, I enjoy bootstrapping and scaling the teams. So we are almost going to be close to 100 very soon, almost there. And this is a journey which I have not done it first time. I did a very similar journey way back in Polycom in 2011 when Bangalore team was set up as well, and that were also grew to almost 100 people. Having the experience of bootstrapping the two entities in last, I would say, a decade, I would say there are a few points which kind of stood test of time for me. So maybe I can just list a few of them, which kind of come on top of my head. The first thing from whenever you're kind of scaling any organization, first thing which kind of is very important to understand is that it's hiring, right? So you have to hire the people, you have to recruit the people. Talent acquisition is the first and the foremost thing. Without the people, there's no organization. The one thing which we realized very quickly with the experience was that when we have the pressures of hiring, you tend to kind of go with the recruitment partners who kind of will tell you that they can scale and they can help you. But for the size of the company, what we are, and with the no brand in there, what we realize is that that really doesn't help. So you have to see that your recruiters are not just the regular recruiters. They are actually the people who can actually who they're almost like salespeople, right? They have to pitch for the
Mm,
company, for the value, for the role, and everything. And when they're doing that with the potential employees or the candidates, they have to be someone who people can believe in, and
Mm.
that thing doesn't come by just someone who doesn't have skin in the game. So the first thing I would say was the first important point is to get the recruiters who are the employees who have stake in the company, who are someone who actually are working full time for you. That's what I would say is the first lesson for us, and having a strong recruiter and the coordinator who can actually work in tandem and make sure that the pitch is right, the candidates are followed up, and make sure that the candidate experience is really top notch.
Mm.
The second point, I would say, in dialpad specifically, I would say the challenge we had was people didn't know about the company. So
Mm.
about the name, and while I would say we as a company are relatively more known in the Silicon Valley, we are a San
Mm.
Francisco based startup, right? So, but India, nobody knew about it.
Mm.
So when somebody kind of makes a call to a candidate, so they would ask like, okay, what's the company, and then how many people are there? So you said, no, we don't know anyone right now. You might be the first person, right? So I think
Mm.
it just, or you might be the 10th person.
Mm.
So it just kind of was a challenge, a lot more bigger challenge for us. If you just compare with Polycom, a lot more people knew. And
Yeah. Yeah.
our favorite pitch was like, have you seen the triangular phone? And people say, yes. And I think that's how the conversation used to start. So there was some reference point over there. So
Mm.
dialpad, we didn't have that reference point for the people to get to know. So we had to do a bunch of things. We realized very quickly, like for instance, we had to make sure that Dialpad India as an entity kind of has a presence in the digital platforms. We quickly went and saw that, okay, if somebody types in dialpad and dialpad India, what appears? So we had to create a Google business page around that. We had to make sure we put some pictures, whatever we had. We had to get to the LinkedIn and make sure we have the right digital presence over there. Especially LinkedIn is a place where people go. I had to very quickly make sure that I changed my role and whatever it is, right. So I think we had to make sure that digital platforms are like really really updated with all the details whatever we can. LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Google, these are I would say the three important ones. When if you're scaling up from the scratch, you have to make sure that your presence is well known. And uh, and then as we started building the company and getting the few first people excited and join us,
Mm.
then we actually use that. I would say the biggest brand, I'm going to continue telling this to my team, is biggest brand we have is the people. So each and
Mm.
every person who joins actually is a brand ambassador. So we use people initially a lot in terms of like who has joined us, and I call them talent magnets, right? So they
Mm.
became the talent magnets for the further one. So I guess these are the two important things from a logistical perspective. We can get to the fact that when you're recruiting in the competitive market like India, you have to really arm your recruiters with the right tools.
Yeah.
As simple as, for instance, LinkedIn is our very primary platform. So you have to make sure that you are spending money on things like something like recruiter license for the
Mm. Mm.
recruiters. They can search better, they can go deeper and all this stuff. Like if you don't do that, they can just maybe take a license, a temp license, but it just is not as effective as, especially when you're going to tech talent, you have to go
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah.
Similarly, for instance, referrals become very important as you get first number of
Mm.
people. When I joined, I reached out to my network, and similarly, first set of people. So referrals, we believe that at least to start with, at least 20 to 30% of the people should come from the referrals, and that's where the conversion rates are much better because people trust the company more because of the people who have joined.
Mm.
And then I think that the other thing, as you're scaling and bootstrapping as you're bootstrapping and slowly scaling the company, it's also very important to keep a tab on how the competitive landscape is. Who are the companies wherein people will join you? Why would they
Mm.
join you? What is the
Mm.
value prop you can actually give? So I would say for a company like us, and it will differ from company to company. For a company like us, we really were very clear in terms of our pitch. Like for instance, our founders, they are ex-Googlers. They used to run the Google Voice, so
Mm.
that excited the team. Number two, the investors were very specific of the investors. Anderson Horowitz, who are the leading investors, Google Ventures. So that kind of gives them a sense that this ship is run by really seasoned people and invested by seasoned people. The third thing was about the domain we are in. And actually post COVID, it became much easier because everybody knew about the this domain, right? So you can get excited by that. And finally, it was about the culture and also what we want to do in India specifically. What is the charter for India? Then digging in all the way down to the role, what role we are looking for.
Right.
So these are the high level pitch deck we had created, and we were making sure that we are talking about that one, because initially it is all about selling. You're selling a story to the people,
Yeah.
right, and hoping that believe you. And then the other thing which kind of really comes back to the and I would say that's the last thing for this point, is about people also looking at, like, what's the compensation, what's the benefits, and all this stuff. So
True.
we kind of had a very conscious decision where we want to kind of peg ourselves as compared to competition. But at the same time, we didn't want to see compensation as the only reason why people should join us. So there were a
Yeah.
bunch of things, ranging from the quality of work, ranging from quality of work, culture, also the fact, all the things which I just mentioned. Joining a company which is like really a well-rounded company, we also paid some attention to the benefits which we could give as a company, so that people feel good about it. So it was I mean, to summarize, it was a very conscious thought process in terms of making sure, from recruiters to the recruitment strategy, to the tools, to the pitch, and then also looking at the compensation and the benefits where you peg yourselves, and making sure that digital platforms, as well as face to face, when people are talking to you, you are communicating the same thing again and again. And as you kind of do that, you will see more and more people like getting convinced, and then they become the brand ambassadors as they go along, and they kind of replicate the same thing. I hope I could answer your question. What we are looking for,
Oh, yes,
hopefully.
of course. Of course. And you answer it, I think, both at a macro level, and then you went into each and every element. And I think this would be very helpful for a lot of people who would be listening to or would be watching this, because, and especially the people who are trying to attract tech talent in India in a market which is considered to be extremely, extremely competitive. There are certain companies who can go on day zero and, get the talent because of many, many reasons. But then there are companies who are really good, want to change the world in their area. They've got good strategy, good backup, and everything, but they have to establish their brand and attract talent.
Right.
And I think that's
Exactly.
where such things which you talked about at macro and micro level definitely will help. I've been talking to a lot of folks in the tech space, and one of the usual issues that they talk about is that we're not able to get talent. Getting talent is not that easy. It's very difficult, and what to do. And I think this is what you are telling and what you laid out for us. This would be something which would be really helpful for them. So thank you for sharing that. I know that you touched on two more points about what would India center mean, and I would come to that. That's my second question. And culture, definitely I'll come back to that later, because that's an area which we would like to explore, understand a lot more from you. It's also very close to our heart, the kind of work that we do. So I'll come to that. So the second question that I have for you, and actually it was a good segue the way you talked about, is while you aim to make India a long-term center of platform development and innovation for dialpad globally, what are some of the factors that gives you confidence about India as a geography?
Uh, I think definitely I'm sold on to India, because I that's what my role is here. So I think more relevant question would be like, the companies who want to invest in India, how would they see it as a long-term strategic bet for them and the investment
Hmm.
destination for them?
Hmm.
See, if you just step back and look at the broad canvas, like India has an immense advantage of very large English-speaking talent pool, and specifically, then you just kind of, if you just further delve down, the actually engineering or technical talent pool.
Hmm.
So what that really helps is, if you look at companies, and I have friends and colleagues at various companies which are at different levels of maturity and the growth. So
Hmm.
there are people who are like really starting, and they want to set up starting, let's say, in North America, and they want to start a center in India.
Yeah.
Versus there are like, the, let's say, companies which are like, let's say, 300, 400 people, they want to start something. And versus there are companies which are like much bigger, right? The big names, big brands, they want to start. So
Yeah.
so you can actually see the entire spectrum of companies who have interest in actually starting the centers in India, because the fundamental reason is it's not just India, but the fundamental reason is that the demand for the tech talent is real, and the world is kind of because of various reasons is getting into that everything's getting digitized, so you need that talent to kind of make that happen. Now what India, stepping back, right, so because of the fact that what we have, the kind of talent pool we have over here, I feel that it gives an opportunity for people at from various levels and scale to look at India. So there may be markets in the world, outside India, which can actually give you the same opportunity, but they may be at a certain level. Let's say they are like very niche, or they may be like you can grow to certain level, and after that you get stuck. But India gives you that opportunity. There are companies who have scaled India centers to 10,000, 20,000. I think there are companies like 100,000 plus, right? So that I think that's a big advantage, because as a business, when you're setting up a center, you also need to look at it from managing the center. You need to bring the economies of scale as you grow. So you don't want to kind of let's say hire people who are supporting the center, and then the center can't grow beyond that, right? So I think that's something you want, continuity and also economies of scale, which India kind of really gives that. And I think the second point I want to mention is when you're setting up a center in India, especially with the fact that a lot of companies have been around for like 2 decades, 3 decades now. Many people have, let's say, worked in outside India in major tech hubs and come back, relocated back. So that and also the experience of people who have kind of worked here for a long time, that kind of gives the companies a great opportunity to hire the good leadership talent over here. Good leadership talent who can understand the culture and how the companies work. Let's say, especially I have worked mostly companies in North America. So how the North American companies work, what's the culture, what works, what doesn't work, where to push, where not to push. So that getting that leadership talent is very important at all the levels. Like thanks to the last couple of decades, what we have seen, right? And the third opportunity I see is while India has been seen only as a tech, hub by many companies, but I can tell you is that India is just not the tech, right? So you can pretty much hire any function, whether it is sales, marketing. It may not be like sales guys who kind of go to the customer, but sales operations kind of people, marketing operations, finance operations, like people who are very critical functions, very strategic, and they don't need to be in front of the customers, or they don't need to be right there, right then when the decision is being taken, right? So there are companies who have formed big practices around those, and they're working really efficiently. So what that also helps is that as companies are growing the India centers, they get an opportunity and to kind of scale those teams as well, along with maybe the tech is still the hub, or tech is still the pivot, but you can actually build the rest of the teams as well over there. And again, it goes back to economies of scale. They get the best ROI on their investments, right? So, and finally, I would say just one more thing, which a lot of companies have also done, which is very interesting and which we see sometimes as a disadvantage of India, is the time zone difference, especially in the context of North America, right? So we are like 12 and a half or 13 and a half, depending on the time.
Depending on the time zone.
Yeah. Sometimes it does get challenging for teams to coordinate and manage, and we call it management overhead, right? So in terms of managing these highly distributed projects wherein there's a lot of interaction, the way we solved in dialpad was that we took a conscious decision that whatever work is getting done in India, eventually at some point we want to make sure the ownership is more in India, so that the management cost is less, right? But actually there are some companies who have used it to their advantage. So they do this follow the sun model, wherein the EMEA, APAC can be done out of India, and then the US and North America can be done somewhere else. So it's a very out of box thinking many companies have thought about in terms of how to use the Indian talent and not get stuck by just the fact that there's a time zone difference and so on. So at the end of the day, what you need is, and COVID and work from home or work from anywhere has further actually accelerated that whole thing, wherein companies are now much more comfortable to kind of work with that kind of model. So these are few, I would say 3 to 4 points I can think from the top of my head why India will be still relevant as a geography, and I have huge confidence that because of the great talent pool and also these aspects which I just discussed, it's going to continue to be the geography of choice for the future investments.
Completely agree, and great to hear from somebody who's bootstrapped to sort of global organizations center based out of India. And I do remember because I was also part of, in some shape or form, the journey when Polycom was
Yes,
trying to move from delivery to innovation center, and
correct.
yeah, so yeah, good to hear that. And I do agree with all the points. And there's one way of looking at it when we meet people, and then there's this stuff that is published in papers, which is of course true. But then you meet someone who says, look, I have confidence because I've gone through this path.
Yeah,
And I do talk to people out there in the US, and I tell them the story of India, and it's sort of given results, proven its credibility over and over again. So lovely,
exactly.
lovely to. Okay, so my next question would be, based on your experience as someone who started the organization in India, Dialpad, what advice or sort of suggestions you'd like to share with, let's say, folks in general, or leaders or entrepreneurs who are trying to build and scale up a tech organization operating out of India, and in the market where conditions are, I would say, amazingly great, and at the same point in time there is a challenge, there is competition, there's huge news of every month a new startup becoming a unicorn, and therefore it further raises the bar with respect to the competition. So what advice would you like to share?
Yeah, I think I, again, this is purely based on my experience and what way I see the market around, and what I have learned from my friends and peers
Mm,
in the industry. It may not be entirely the entire spectrum, but I can just maybe point out a few points which I think, based on my experience, what might be helpful for someone who's actually going to be trying to build and scale a tech organization operating out of India.
mm,
I would say to start with, like we tell, for somebody who is doing a startup, like
mm,
start with a problem, right? What problem are you solving?
mm,
So similarly, if I just translate the same thing for starting a center in India,
mm,
it's very important for somebody at a leadership level to work with the team. The exec team, whether it's in US, Europe, whosoever is starting the center in India, to figure out where are you in terms of the maturity model, or not where are you, where do you want to peg yourself in the maturity
mm,
model for India center. Just to kind of explain that a little bit further, what I mean by that is, like, you could actually start a center which is focused on, let's say, just the backend support, which is a great place to start with, right? Or you could decide and say that, hey, it should be only tech focused versus not tech focused.
mm,
Or you could say that even in the tech focused, it can be support and ownership of some components of certain products over
mm,
here. Uh, or you could go further. From maturity model, I mean is that the complexity of work
mm,
starts increasing, right? Then you could kind of go to the next level wherein you say that it's not just about support or owning the components, it's about also owning a product, right?
mm,
Along with the rest which comes along with it, right? You could actually go to the next level and say that, hey, our vision is that India Center should just not own the product, but also co-innovate it with, let's say, somebody in headquarters to kind of come up with a new product. So, and then maybe the next levels can be also, you can keep thinking about, like, for instance, the India team can also look at, like, how it can support the teams to sell in India, or or to also grow the business in India, which is even the next level of maturity model.
mm,
So depending on where you want to peg yourself, and you can't just start right at the top, you have to kind of go through some stages. So you
mm,
have to make a conscious decision where you want to start. Depending on where you are starting the India Center with the goal, and the vision, from there, a lot of things will start kind of flowing out in a proper way. So assuming, let's say, you want to kind of start from a point wherein you know for sure that the team in India is going to be owning a product, not just owning the component, owning a product. So what you quickly kind of that makes you think is that, oh, it's just not just having the engineering team. I also need to make sure I have a product managers.
mm,
I need to have designers. I need to have not just developer and QA. I also need to have quick decision making. I also need to have somewhere to figure out that where the markets are. So
mm,
so it's like owning the product end to end just means a lot of those kind of things. So then you kind of start the next level, that strategy will help you to come to the next level, which is what is the hiring strategy I need to have to support that higher level strategy for the India, right? So you kind of hire the right set of people. Now, if you're owning the product, for instance, if that's what your strategy is going to be, then you need to make sure that you're hiring the right leadership who can help you to kind of drive the product, whether it's engineering or product management and those kind of people, right? So you need to have that. So automatically that also helps you from not just from hiring the right people, but also attracting the right people. Getting the right good people from the market is always tough. It's not about just you going and they joining you, right? You have to pitch and they have to be convinced that this is the right place for them. So when you pitch them a bigger charter, which is kind of signed off by the exec team and everyone else, then they are also 100% sure that this is the right place for them to join, because there's enough challenge and work which they see they are going to be driving, right? So similarly, when you at all the levels, everybody gets excited by the bigger picture, what they're going to do. So I would say that's the biggest and the most important thing to do, because many times what I see is that when people start India Center, they don't really consciously think about that, and they just start hiring.
Yeah.
And they just say that, okay, it doesn't really matter, let's hire whatever comes our way. And that dilutes the whole point of like giving the right pitch, right? So that is the topmost. The second thing I feel, the important thing is you have to be totally in sync with the your key stakeholders from the headquarters.
Yeah.
I would call them sponsor or sponsors who really are looking to grow the India, because there will be ups and downs. It will not be a smooth journey. So you need to kind of make sure that there is someone you're tied to the hip, in terms of somebody who believes in the story of India, in you and the leadership, and then making sure that there's a continuous communication happening in terms of like what is going well, what's not going well, what we need to start, what we need to stop, a lot of that kind of things, and in a very open and transparent way, so that there is because at the end of the day, they have a huge stake in making the India Center successful. So that's where you need to have that conversation very regularly, right? And third thing I would say is as you're building the team, it can be very hard. And I mean, I remember when we started the dialpad, me and a couple of guys were doing it. We were spending like 80% of our time just hiring, right? So we didn't even have a recruiter to start with. Even to hire the recruiter, we took time. It was hard. It was like the first person who joined, I had to go to the shop and buy the laptop for that person, right? So it's as hard as that, right? So sometimes if you're not tuned to that kind of a work, you'll think that, I was not doing the same work. I had a corner office in Polycom. Now I'm doing this kind of a stuff. But I mean, you had to be prepared, and I was prepared. So it was not a difficult thing. But I think what really makes it fun, personally for me, is the fact that each and you see, it's like, you see the baby born, and then it starts crawling, and there are different phases. And if you can just kind of see it like that, you literally enjoy each and every stage. And it's very important to build that kind of a culture where people are kind of enjoying that each and every milestone. They're celebrating it. And it could be, and I think that's the culture, right? Kind of getting making sure that everybody's feeling good about it. And it can start with you, but I can tell you that it is something which people like about, and that's why they join the company from the beginning or in the middle, because they see themselves part of the growth story, and everybody loves that growth story, and they want to celebrate it at each time. And as long as you're doing it, I mean, if there was an office, you would do it physically. Because of COVID, it's tougher. So if you can use the digital platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, whatever you can. I think as much as you can, if you can kind of celebrate these moments, each and every small milestone, I think that will go a long way in terms of helping you to grow the site.
Mm. Yeah. When you started off, and I was quite, I think that's a very important point, and that you made all the points very practical. But where do you want to peg it? I think that's something,
Yes.
at times, that's the question that needs a clear answer, and then once you're clear here where you want to peg it, then how do you want to move it forward, and when do you want to move it forward? And
Correct.
that, of course, it's not a clear-cut answer. You can expedite it or delay it depending on the environment and various other factors. But if the starting point is clear, then you can really make the progress, and all the other pieces start falling in place.
Exactly.
um,
And like a startup, and I'm sure that you have gone through that yourself when you started your company, right? So what you start with, you may pivot as you go along, but it's very important to start with something which you
mm,
have a goal on.
mm,
And I keep telling that, especially in a startup, you will never be perfect, right?
mm,
But you need to still have a plan.
mm,
And if you go wrong, you just accept it, and all of you change the plan
mm,
and move towards something else, right? But
mm,
having a plan is very important. Otherwise, there can be a lot of confusion, and especially if the candidate is talking. I mean, going back to this discussion, what we are having. If the candidate is talking to, like, say, three panel
mm.
members in an interview team, and candidates will be asking a lot of questions to you
Yeah.
because you are not Google or Facebook and they know about it. Yeah.
Mm,
So they will be asking different questions like why is it, why is that? If the entire panel is not in sync in terms
mm,
of what we want to do
mm,
here, in terms of why we are here, right? So the candidate will get very, very will not be in sync, and not get really excited about the role.
mm, 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 mm. And I think what also I liked, and I could relate to it more, was the idea of saying that, look, I'm building an organization now. And when I'm building an organization, there are various roles that I'll have to play. I cannot have a value judgment on a particular kind of role. For example, going out and, in your case, buying a laptop sort of a thing. Well,
Yes.
that's an important piece. And at this stage, I have to do it.
Oh yeah,
Eh,
I mean we are so particular and so finicky about the candidate experience and onboarding and all those things from the beginning. And I think I
mm,
should say, in general, a dialpad is, and we have just inculcated the same values here. Uh, each and every small thing matters,
mm,
and I think we actually make sure that uh, anytime the candidate experience or the onboarding experience is goes down, we go back and kind of see what went wrong and how we can do it better next time.
uh,
It's almost like a customer, right? So just like people talk about customer experience, I think the candidate experience is very important. And obviously, the employee experience, there are a bunch of things
yeah,
which every company does.
yeah,
But when you're starting, these guys are not your employees,
yeah,
right? So your first sole motive is to make sure that what we have also seen is that candidate experience becomes so important is because many people, and I can tell you that many people who actually didn't join us initially, they have come back to us and joined us after 2 years. Many people who got rejected have come back to us later on because they have really liked the whole experience, especially the interview experience, the panel, and everything. That they really wanted to work with this company.
yeah,
And as they kind of went along with the interviews, every interview they kind of fell more and more in love with the company and the culture, because it was not fake. They thought that it is authentic. Every
mm,
person who's talking to them is authentic, and is whenever whatever they're telling is not something they have cooked up, right? They really believe from the heart when they're
mm,
telling them that, hey, these are the things which we like as a company. And when an engineer listens to another engineer, who has been working for, like, let's say 2 years here and still has the same energy, I think that is what kind of really makes them to come. And when they come in
mm,
there, they also kind of just become they also kind of, let's say, paint the same color on the face and then go and talk to other candidates. So candidate experience is super, super important. And I would say one thing which many people underestimate, while branding is all about, like, okay, put the placards, go on the digital platform, go on Google and all
mm,
this stuff. But one thing people really, really underestimate is the power of actually the people who are with you and how much they can actually help others to join, right? And I
mm,
think, and I also believe that initially it takes time for you to get the A team, but A team gets you the A team, right? That they
ah,
become the guardians of the culture and what they believe in, and they will make sure that they get the similar people also on board. So the initial set of people become very, very critical when you are actually
mm,
scaling up, right? So even if you take some time, I would say just take some time, but get the right people
mm,
who kind of there's no right or wrong, but people who kind of align with your vision and people who align with your thought process and how you want to take it. Because there are brilliant people, skilled people, but they may have a very different view of what they want
correct.
to do, right? And I think it's very important to make sure that that conversation happens right up front, so that they are very excited when they join, right? So they know that exactly what they're getting in.
I think, the idea of building an organization brick by brick in a particular geography comes
Yes.
so obvious. The clarity and the passion with which you talk, it's so obvious. It just, you exude that clarity and passion because you've built it brick by brick. And I think a lot of my friends, perhaps who are in the talent acquisition world, in the technology space, they would love to listen to this podcast, apart from many others, because I think a lot of things that you're talking about is something that I've heard them uh, deal with and at times struggle with. And I did, towards the end, I heard you talking about the culture bit, which now, I said in the beginning when we were on the first question that I'll come to the culture bit later, because that's something of interest to me personally, and also to my organization. So the question to you on that front is that, in a competitive environment, when you are acquiring talent from different sources, as well as delivering on aspirational goals, how do you cascade and nurture a set of core beliefs or culture that the organization stands for? How do you manage to do that?
Uh, so I think, see, culture is something which when you're building a center in India, and again, I'll just want to keep the problem statement more in the context of what we're talking about, because culture can kind of mean a lot of things.
Yeah, it can become,
So,
yeah.
so you as a leader and you as a leadership team, I mean, you are not only on the team who's kind of going to be the foundation team. You always, and including the initial recruiters, initial leaders, and initial engineers, also the first engineer, these all the people together. What you need to make sure is that you spend some time to understand the culture of the bigger, your mothership, the
Okay.
company
The
which you're
parent
setting up.
organization.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that that India centers should not have their very different and their own cultures, which is very, very, different to what we have as a headquarters, or you call it mothership, or you call it the rest of the company.
Yeah.
So it's very important to start with, to kind of make sure that you understand what is the culture, and every company has their own culture, and culture is not about just looking at the slide and talking about these are our values, these are our things, right? When you talk to the people, when you understand the people, you ask the right questions, when you observe things, when you hear the stories, that's all what the culture is all about, right? And certain things you may agree to, certain things you may not agree to, and you have to kind of decide, like, if you're agreeing, you like it, that's good. Certain things you're not comfortable with, that you have to go and make sure that you are asking the right questions to the right people, especially your sponsors and stakeholders, so that you get convinced. And if there is, a lot of times it may be because of some reason that whole culture has been there, right? So all those things together would really help you to kind of make sure that you are articulating the culture aspect of it, and you want to build a similar culture over here. Now there will be, as everything else is called global, right? There's some global and there's a local thing. So so it culture also comes a little bit from a flair of your leadership, and it's not like as simple as like you copying everything, right? It also comes your beliefs, and a lot of those also influence. But I would say it's very important to kind of make sure that the overall global culture, what we have as a company, it doesn't kind of get diluted. That's very important. Just to give an example, in Dialpad, one thing which I really liked was, we have a story wherein our CEO Craig. So when he started, he said, like, the only culture in the company is this three words, or four words, I should say: do the right thing. So so what that really means is that he said, I trust my employees, I trust my people, and at any point of time, if you believe this is the right thing to do, just go about it. You don't have to kind of ask 10 questions and everything, right? We trust you to make the right decision for yourself, for your team, for your project, and everybody else. So it was a very powerful thing for me, because I think if you ask any person in Dialpad, what is the one thing which they remember as a culture, this is the one thing. And it just keeps you, while it just gives you a lot of space to work, but it also kind of puts that extra amount of accountability and responsibility for you to make sure that, hey, I need to do the right thing. So these are the small stories which kind of really help you to translate, the culture. We as a company, I think I would say Dialpad specifically, in this case, right? we are very, very transparent about a lot of things. Like as compared to many other companies I have worked with, and I know a lot of companies where my friends work, where we share transparently the financial details. We share the customers who we have lost, who we have gained. We share where we are doing well, where we're not doing well. And this doesn't happen quarterly. I mean, we used to do every weekly. Now we have shifted to every bi-weekly or something like that. Everything which gets discussed with the board, shared with the board, gets actually presented to the employees. So there's a huge amount of transparency which kind of gets, translated to the employees, and that kind of a culture is very important, especially. And again, I should credit that to the headquarters or to our CEO and the E staff, because they want to build a culture wherein there's a transparency. Because once you have the transparent culture, there's nothing to hide. We really trust our employees that they will keep it confidential wherever they have to, right? They don't kind of spell it out. But it hasn't happened till now. But it just tells you that more you trust your employees, more you're transparent, more you actually trust them to do the right thing, as we just say, right? The magic happens. We hire really smart people from industry. We don't have to tell them how to do it. We just tell them what to do and then trust them on that part. And I think that's the culture which people really like. And also I would say on a tactical basis, when we are hiring the people, we put a lot of emphasis on hiring the good culture fit, right? So like every interview, actually we do make sure that there is a round wherein we check on aspects which we care about as a company, that it's not about like right or wrong, or this person is like this or that, but at least the person should show the natural inclination towards some of the values which we believe in, right? So yes, so I think we also make sure that that extra bit of effort is done right in the front, in the beginning, so that the wrong hire doesn't come in, right? Because cost of wrong hire, as you all know, is very, very high.
Yeah. So this was quite powerful, and I think, as you rightly said, when you don't have reams of policy around culture, and if the leadership says that just do the right thing, you know, on the face of it, it may look easy, but as you rightly pointed out, a huge ownership then gets transferred onto you.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you are particularly, I would say, most of the people would particularly be far more cautious that they are doing the right thing.
They are doing the right thing, correct. And it's not that this is the only one. We have a few more things, but I'm just saying it's the story is it started from there. Our policy book was that these 4 words, and that kind of still continues. I mean, while few other things have changed, this kind of continues, and I think maybe it has resonated very closely with me and a lot of us. So I always kind of that's your North Star, right? Which you literally want to kind of maintain in a company. And even when you're growing the organization, there will be some misfires. Like you may not hire the right person, or some person will do something which you are not very happy with. But what you kind of remind yourself very quickly is that one thing going wrong should not really impact the broader goal what you have from a culture perspective, right? The typical reaction to something going wrong in a company is that, okay, let's tighten the screws, let's kind of put more control and all this stuff. So which is very human and natural and everything like that, because you don't want to kind of take the risk of like repeating it. But I think what really that culture gives you is that sense of safety net, saying that, okay, even if things go wrong, I think we as a company believe in this, and we do always want to trust our employees, even if there is a one-off case which doesn't go that way.
And I think exactly, I mean, the trust part that you're talking about, when I hear somebody say just do the right thing, as if the employer is saying that and I am the person who's applying for job, to me it translates as, well, I trust you that you will do the right thing, and therefore there are no reams of policies. So it's, starting point is the position of trust. It comes across like this. The starting point is not the position of neutrality or distrust.
Correct.
So personally, to me, and it may mean different things to different people, but to me, if I'm looking for a job in a company where it says just do the right thing, that's what it means. I think it will start from the position of, okay, here is the position of trust. That's where it is.
Exactly.
And therefore, it is far more important for me now not to ensure not to break that trust.
Not to break that, exactly. And look at it this way, right? So with the COVID, with work from remotely and all this stuff, like companies who had a lot of these guardrails and a lot of controls, whereas it has just vanished, right? So I think it means a lot to kind of have that kind of a trust on your employees to ensure that they're doing the right thing. During these times, especially when employees can be anywhere, right? So there is no way to kind of put those controls. But honestly, these kind of things were much before COVID, just to clarify, right? These were not like because of COVID. I think it just helped us as a company to kind of deal with the situation much more quicker. We were one of the first companies to kind of just tell our employees to work from home, by the way. Right. So because we didn't have the qualms of like, okay, how is this going to work? How we're going to manage control, because there was an inherent trust that people are going to do the right thing. And we could just kind of start with like, okay, let's work from home tomorrow. So it would work perfectly. And it has worked perfectly for us, which eventually has worked perfectly for almost everybody.
Many now. Yeah. But some were forced. See, the beauty is that if your fundamentals are based on some of these universal principles like trust and all, even if you are hit with an uncertain event like pandemic, you still are able to move and sail somewhat smoothly as compared to the others, because these fundamentals help you. You're not fighting the battle of I'm losing control.
Correct.
Right. And I think that's a great example. And I personally liked, I'm sure there are many more parts to the culture, but I also like the part of just do the right thing. So,
yes.
What I'll do is now I'll move on to the last question that I have for you.
Sure.
And I think this one is also an interesting one, at least to hear it from you. So, as a leader, what are some of the minefields that one needs to be cautious of when one is trying to scale up the organization, uh, as we are chasing a very strong growth trajectory, which is expected from the business? So, what are some of the minefields one needs to be cautious of?
Yeah, so I have been in the situation wherein either as a company or as a group, you are in the hyper growth mode, and you. I mean, there are goals sometimes, and there are like unset expectations sometimes about the growth, right? So I think so that definitely, especially when you're starting the center here, or for the matter anywhere you're starting, right? So if there are not people coming on board with a good pace, there's a pressure. So I think nobody can take that away from you. uh, I think you talk about the minefields or the things you should kind of watch out, right? So first thing I would say is just like I talked about, like where you peg, yourself in terms of the maturity model for any center. The other important thing, which is very important, is which I didn't talk about that, but it's very important, is where do you peg yourself in terms of the quality of the hires you make? When I say quality, means you have a talent pool over there, and then depending, it's kind of related to the first one only, like quality of work will derive the quality of talent, right? If you're pegging yourself from a strategy perspective at the right side of the spectrum, wherein the complexity of the work which you're going to do is high, then obviously the quality of talent you're going to hire is also higher, right? And if you're doing that, then you kind of peg your bar. Where is your hiring bar? Where are you kind of, what kind of people are you hiring? And I think the minefield there is that if you don't have a good sense of what is that hiring bar, because of the pressure said and unsaid, you can potentially lower that. And if the pressure is high, you can still lower that. So I think there is definitely a chance of you kind of meeting the numbers, and so I would say that's the first thing which you want to do. And I think your sponsor or your headquarters or whosoever is kind of supporting the center has to be totally in sync with that thing, right? Many times the pressure will be so high, and sometimes people will find it very difficult to explain to your sponsor or to your execs that, hey, why the hiring is slow. So I think that is the one minefield. Just make sure that you pick your bar, and then once you do that, once you hold that, if it's not happening, instead of lowering it, you need to figure out what is going wrong and what can I do to kind of maintain that. Sometimes, based on my experience, what I've seen is, let's say we start with one recruiter, or the recruitment capacity is low, right? So obviously, with the competitive market, you cannot have less recruitment capacity. Maybe it was okay 10 years back, but right now you need to have more recruitment capacity because the number of people you need to screen and then get to that part is a lot more. So work is more. There's more work. More work means more capacity. So
Yeah.
sometimes it may require you to kind of evaluate your recruitment capacity. Sometimes it may evaluate your strategy in terms of like how you're reaching your candidates. Sometimes it may force you to evaluate in terms of like, are you doing enough in terms of the referrals? So there are many other things which you need to evaluate. But one thing which you really need to kind of keep constant is the hiring bar, and the rest of the things you need to kind of make sure you are kind of changing. So I would say because lowering the hiring bar and saying okay, I think he or she is just meeting a list, kind of just get this person in, then it just starts diluting, and then you don't, that doesn't force you to think about some other things you could have done, right? So that's number one, I would say, is a definitely a big minefield. And again, the impact of lowering the bar, I think I also want to talk about that very quickly. If you are planning to do high complexity work in India, uh, you might meet the numbers which maybe somebody is evaluating, but eventually what really matters is, are you able to do that work with the right velocity, with the right quality, and then with the right cadence, right? And it is only possible if you have the right people. So you need to keep the long term view of what you want to do there, rather than just trying to meet the numbers, right? So I think that's I just want to emphasize that again, giving the context of the long term implication
Right.
of, if you do it,
Right.
there may be a longer term implication
Perfect.
of you kind of struggling later on. The second I mean, minefield, use the word minefield, is basically like anything else in the business. I would always say, try to see we can actually take data-oriented decisions or data-based decisions. For instance, if you are having no shows or no, offer to decline ratio is high, or your compensation is doesn't seem to be right, or your benefits don't seem to be right. There can be many things why you're not able to hire these candidates, or some candidates are not accepting your offer, or things like that, or negotiations going too long, or stuff like that. It's very important for you, especially in the initial phase, to collect this data regularly. Find the reasons. I mean, one or two cases should not, as you know, there's also a lot of recency factor, right? So this candidate happened to reject the job because of brand. So you think, oh, I'm not able to hire because our brand is not strong. Or other candidates said compensation. So unless you collect the data and then see for some time, for some numbers, then see the pattern, it's very difficult for you to kind of really figure out what your top reasons are because of which you are not able to kind of grow and scale the thing. So I will, like anything else, I would say just keep collecting the data and make sure you're using some good tools in hiring, and then in your thing, so that you can actually use that. We use a lot. I mean, in dialpad, we use a lot of metrics to kind of just keep a tab on a lot of things. We have a lot of metrics on how we do it, but I would really suggest to do that. That makes the conversation also very objective, and also your plans and also the interventions also become a lot more thing, and then you can measure. If something worked, you can go back and look at the metric and see that, okay, no, this is kind of working fine. Uh, the other thing which also I see is the third thing I would say in terms of the minefield is during the COVID times, right? The world has changed, and when you wanted to open a center over here in India, many times you would kind of think of an office, right? So I have to have 50 people. So where should I? What office should I do and stuff like that. Many employees were very particular about, oh, I want to see the office, I want to see the board, I want to see the nice lounge chairs and all this stuff, right? I think things have changed during last 2.5 years. So I would say whenever you're starting something, always don't over-index a lot on the office in these times, right? So you can really think about. I mean, you still need an office, but when you're starting new and fresh, right? So you can think about many other possibilities, whether it is a co-working space and other things, right? So which will give you help, which will help you to kind of scale up, scale down, and also kind of evaluate how we want to eventually run the office in India, rather whether it's a distributed one city, two cities. A lot of opportunities start coming in, and I personally feel that, again, I mean, unless you are you want to start a center which is like thousands of people, then obviously then you have to kind of make sure that you are thinking about some one anchor office in India which can actually scale up so much. Like for instance, Google is scaling like in thousands. So obviously then it makes sense to kind of just do that. But if you are not that scale, then you want flexibility and you want to make sure you are kind of evaluating this lot more before you actually take a bigger decision on the offices, right? Um, the third or fourth point I have is when you're starting something, many times people don't realize it, but hiring is going to be one of the primary activity you're going to do in first 6 months. I would say 6 to 9 months. Each one of you, not just you, but also the people you are hiring and the people who they are hiring, right? I have seen my personal experience when you are taking the projects and everything. Uh, People think that, oh, you are hired 3 months, I mean, you can start delivering this, right? And 6 months you can start delivering that. They don't realize that hiring takes almost 60 to 70% of your mind share and the time share, right? And especially more the competitive market, the more time you have to spend, right? So I think you have to be very careful in terms of making sure you're not committing any deliverable too early, or the scope of the deliverable is too big, right, which you can't handle because you have not really looked at the hiring as a big activity initially, right? So that is one of the things which is because you might be doing okay, but you'll get under double whammy. You have a pressure of hiring, you have pressure of deliverable, and you have not really estimated it right. Yeah, I think these are the top ones, and then I think the couple of small ones I would say is I think when you're getting when you're starting, you're getting everybody's new, right? So you have to continuously take the feedback of how things are going, whether it's the interviewing, onboarding, and also there may be challenges, smaller challenges, bigger challenges, like which people will tell you. So you have to continuously take the feedback and get it addressed at a dynamic pace, right? Because you will not have full-fledged HR team, you will not have facilities team, you will not have, so it is all growing up, and everybody's coming on board. So literally you have to kind of communicate a lot and take the feedback and get things sorted as they kind of go along. And well, last thing more on the hiring part, which personally I think I have seen challenge is, especially when the market is dynamically changing and is on the, and especially when you're forming a center which is part of the global ecosystem. For the first one, when the market is changing, you have to kind of make sure you are actually defining what percentile you want to fix your compensation ranges, right? I would say the earlier you do, the better it is, because then you take a hard call right at the beginning rather than kind of, taking it later on. It makes it easier because I've seen if you don't do it properly, there are a lot of time you waste in terms of like approvals, reapprovals, exceptions, and all those things, which can be avoided, right? So if you kind of just decide right in the beginning, and many big companies do it because they have like compensation benefits team and all this stuff. But when you get started, you miss on those things. You say, okay, let's hire and we'll figure it out. Which is the right strategy. But at least try to kind of just do some research in parallel to make sure that where you want to be. It can also be that you want to hire for like 3 to 6 months and then decide. That's also fine. But I think that's one thing you would like to kind of just figure out as early as possible, which will reduce your this friction and also the time. And the second thing, which also I would say is the levels should be as close, or I would say I would recommend similar to the global level. When I say level, means job levels, right? I think there are two school of thought. Some people think that India, we need more job levels because people want to get promoted but I have a different opinion. I'm based on my experience. I feel people in India are very mature. They know that these extra levels are just inflated, and eventually what really matters is they want to see
the content of the role.
Yes, the content of the role, and actually they are getting what they truly deserve, right? So I don't know what's the right, there may be pros and cons for both, but personally I would say not to have inflated levels, right? Have it and this is not something in dialpad. I've seen this in previous companies. I always have been very, very pro about having the global levels, and whatever the levels are, at the end of the day, they should be global. So one is like not giving the feeling of inflated levels. That's it actually kind of boomerangs rather than helps. in my opinion. The second thing is also having the consistent levels and expectation around those levels helps in terms of things like, for instance, job movements across, whether it's regions and geographies or teams and those kind of things, right? So it also helps in kind of making sure that things are normalized rather than kind of, skewed. So I think these are the, I would say, top things which you said minefields, right? The minefields which I can think about right now.
That was lovely. I think that's sort of a short masterclass for a lot of HR heads who are trying to, look for a space in a tech organization, which is startup, wants to attract talent, wants to do great job, is a part of a global company, and there are possibilities of growing immensely. So the short
Correct.
masterclass that you've given to a lot of HR heads, I think they will thank you for that. And I think that's all that I have for you. I would personally like to, say a big thanks. So thank you for taking time out for this conversation. I'm sure our listeners and viewers will immensely benefit from your views and perspectives. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vivek. It was lovely talking to you and catching up with you, and I'm sure that I couldn't cover everything which might be helpful, but I'm hoping that whatever I could cover today, it will be helpful for some people for sure.
Definitely. So thank you and bye bye. And that's how we sign off. Bye.
Thank you.